What do you do when you have too much month left at the end of your money? That is not a rhetorical question. It is the last week of February, and I have had $20.41 left to spend for all of my household budgeting. So groceries, miscellaneous, etc. And that's for a whole week. So what do I do when I have just a little bit of money but a whole lot of time? How do I stretch that money? How do I make it work? This is just a discussion for moms and really just in part to get to the heart of the matter on this issue of our finances when they're tight. Okay, so I have a few suggestions for us as moms. And I really want to encourage you to view this kind of a situation as a challenge, a fun challenge, one you are going to conquer, one that you're going to approach with excitement and with energy. And you're going to conquer it. And I don't know your situation. Perhaps your situation is much, much more dire than this. And that may be a totally different scenario. So you can't apply what I'm saying to really heavy, deep financial struggles. This conversation is for moms who have almost made it to the end and they just have a few days left maybe in their month and they only have a few dollars left, but they're about ready to pull out their credit card. And I'm just saying, whoa, stop, take a step back. Think about that for a second. The last thing you want to do is to pull out your credit card. Let's talk about things we can do instead of that. So the first suggestion I have is to delay. Employ every delay tactic you have. For instance, I'll give you some specific things that have happened this week. Number one, my boys need some new music books. They don't need them today. They don't need them by next week. But in the next couple of weeks, they're going to need those music books. Normally, I would go right away and order them from Amazon, have them delivered. They're here when they need them. But because I'm at the end of my month and I'm almost at the end of my money, I don't want to spend my last $20 bill on music books. So I am going to delay. I'm going to wait a few days. By Saturday, it's the beginning of March, and I can purchase those music books. I am trying to keep my budget tidy and neat for this month. It's not that we don't have money for those books. We have money for those books if I want to buy them, but I'm trying not to get out of my budget for this month because my budget is a challenge. It's not a jail cell. I'm using my budget because I know if I keep within these restrictions, then I have the money I want for other things at a different time. So my budget is not a jail cell. It is actually freedom. Within that budget, within the restrictions of my budget, I have absolute freedom. I want to encourage you to think about it like that too. So I'm going to delay on my music books. Here's one that you don't really want to hear about. Toilet paper. Okay, we have 3 bathrooms in our house and we had 2 rolls of toilet paper and a little bit left on a 3rd roll. Okay, I'm going to have to use part of my $20 to buy toilet paper. And I can go and I can buy a couple of rolls of toilet paper. And it's not going to dent too much, my $20. What I'm not going to do is go to Sam's Club or Walmart and buy a huge pack of 17 rolls of toilet paper, number one. Number two, I'm also going to wait a little bit. So what I did was I took the very tiny roll and I wrapped more toilet paper on it from a different roll. That will last us at least a day. I've already eked out a day or two from that. I put that in my least used bathroom. Okay, food. How about food? I am going to delay to go to the grocery store and do my big haul until next month. I can wait till Saturday. I can eke out and eke through the food I have in my refrigerator, my freezer, my pantry. I can make that work for the rest of this week probably. And if I need 1 or 2 items, I still have $20. After I buy toilet paper, it'll probably be more like, 15 or 16. Gas. Gas is another one you can possibly delay on. So if you are getting very close to the end of the month, you have to fill up. But normally you fill up at about 1/3 of a tank. Maybe you can wait until 1/4 of a tank. I mean, I'm not saying run out of gas. That will cost a lot more. If you have to call a tow truck or something like that, it's going to cost you a lot more than a tank of gas would. But you don't have to go out and get it today unless you're really on E. As long as you have gas for what you need for the next 2 days, keep on going. Delay filling the tank. Because if you have any gas money left over at the end of the month, well, I'll get to that in a little bit. So my first tactic was delay. My second tactic is to make do. Use what you have. So I told you about my toilet paper. I unrolled it. I re-rolled it. We're making do. It'll last us a couple days. And then I will have to buy toilet paper. That's okay. I want to share a little story about when I was in college and I was paying my way through college and funds were really tight. And I was out of money and I was also almost out of toothpaste. And you can live without a lot of things, but you cannot live without toothpaste, especially not as a college student. And I just prayed about it. I mean, I knew I was going to have some money in about a week and I was almost at the end of my toothpaste and I was not prone to not brushing my teeth. I was a pretty regular toothbrusher person. So I just told the Lord, I need you to make this toothpaste like the cruse of oil. That lady, that widow lady in the Old Testament kept pouring oil out of her tiny little amount of oil. She made so much bread with it. And she used it until she didn't need it anymore. And I said, Lord, if you could do that with oil, you can do that with my toothpaste. And the Lord did. I felt like I was on the end of that toothpaste tube for a week. And somehow I kept just squeezing a little bit more out and a little bit more out and a little bit more out. So I think we can pray, and praying should, of course, always be number one, but prayer in conjunction with some of these other things, using what we have, delaying. So if we're using what we have for food, let's just say food, because that's primarily where we get antsy about our budget. If you're going to make do with what you have, and you normally have Taco Tuesday, this week you might not have Taco Tuesday, and that's okay. You might have to make Taco Tuesday become breakfast for dinner day, and you have eggs. Well, maybe not right now, because eggs are more expensive than gold right now, but maybe you can have pancakes for dinner, because everybody always has flour, salt, and baking powder, right? So you could probably make pancakes for dinner, and it would be a lot cheaper than making tacos. So using what you have. I like to think of some of my recipes as cheat eats. They're cheaper than other meal plans, and I use them when I need to cheat my budget. So, for instance, one of the things I frequently do, especially if I know the month will be tight, is when I'm making a family pack of chicken, and my kids can blow through an entire family pack of chicken. If I make Korean chicken and rice, my kids will eat the entire batch. I'm serious. Like, they can fill up. They're boys. They're active. They play ball. They do all kinds of active things. They're hungry at dinner. But they will only eat what I put on the table. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I buy a family pack of chicken, and I would normally make the whole thing, I'll take out like 2 chicken breasts and I'll put them in a bag in the freezer, or even 1 each time. So then in my freezer, I have these little bags of meat. And at the end of the month, when you're down to $20, that is like pure gold, because you can take that little bit of meat and you can make things like soup or chili or fried rice. And you can use 1 chicken breast or 2 chicken breasts and make an entire meal out of what you would have just had as leftovers from a different meal. So I consider that my cheat eats. I do this with ground beef. I'll either freeze a little bit of the raw ground beef in a bag in the freezer, like a cup or 2, or I will, as I'm cooking it up with onions and salt and pepper and whatever, I will separate out a cup or 2 and put it in the freezer for a night when I just need to throw together a casserole or soup or something. A baked potato bar. If you have a bag of potatoes that are kind of going bad in your pantry, use them as a cheat eats. Make a baked potato bar. I have ham left over from Christmas in my freezer. After Christmas, I actually usually buy an extra ham or 2 because the prices are amazing. I cook it, I dice it into small pieces, I put it in freezer bags in my freezer. When it comes to the end of the month and I need something to see me through, I will grab that bag of ham out of the freezer and I'll throw it on potatoes for a baked potato bar. Maybe I'll make omelets with it. Maybe I'll make soup or some kind of maybe potatoes au gratin with ham. And ham can just elegant up any meal. So that helps a lot. One thing I do when I'm low on money, now my kids are home every day for lunch because I homeschool. So every day I try not to give them sandwiches every day for lunch. I like to make them other meals so that, maybe twice a week they'll eat sandwiches, and then the other days I'll cook a hot meal of some sort. Usually it's not very fancy because I also cook every night at dinner. But one of the things that I will occasionally do is make pizza for them for lunch. And often I'll just buy frozen pizzas or something like that. But when I'm on a tight budget, I usually just pull out like a bag of English muffins. Maybe I've frozen them or I bought them already in advance. And it's less than $2 for a bag of English muffins. And then I'll just use whatever leftover cheese I have in my refrigerator. If I have leftover spaghetti sauce or pizza sauce, or even a can of like tomato sauce that I can fancy up to be a pizza sauce by adding, garlic powder or Italian spices, stuff like that. Whatever I have. And I'll just put that on there with whatever toppings I have. My kids love pepperoni. Usually I have extra pepperoni in my refrigerator. And so I just make mini pizzas, and it's pretty cheap, and I'm just using what I have. When it comes to making dinner, I do put a little more effort into that. And I still have some cheat eats that I like to use. I have a recipe for lentil brown rice burritos. I love that recipe. It's really delicious. However, I don't usually make it. It takes about 2 hours to cook. So I'm heating my house when I make it like that. Or I could throw it into the crock pot, but it never turns out as well. And so it's just a little extra time and stuff like that. So it's a rare thing that I'll make that. But when I come to the end of the month and I'm low on money, that's my go-to, because I almost always have tortillas in my refrigerator, or I can make them myself. By the way, homemade tortillas are amazing. They're so much better than anything you buy at the store. And that's just lentils and brown rice. I always have those in my pantry. I use them for other things too. And then some spices, some chicken broth. Usually I have some of that frozen, or I buy it sometimes. I usually have it in my pantry. And then just spices. And it tastes so good. It's really delicious. I almost like it better than beef or even chicken burritos at some point, because I just love Mexican food. But that recipe is so delicious, and it's so inexpensive. Another thing I'll make a lot of times are things like, I already mentioned fried rice, pancakes, baked potato bar. For lunch, I'll grill sandwiches for my kids. So grilled cheese. Maybe grilled cheese and some soup, or grilled peanut butter sandwiches. My husband loves that. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it is. Some other things that I like to make when I have just like leftovers floating around in my refrigerator and I'm just making do with what I have are quesadillas. Again, I always have tortillas. And so that's just a little bit of cheese, a little bit of meat, maybe some veggies, and you just heat them up in your cast iron pan. Chef salad with whatever meat you have left over. Taco salad, and I can, so last night I made the lentil brown rice burritos. Tonight we're going to eat it as a taco salad. I'm going to put out chips and whatever chips I have left in my house, and then some cheese, some salsa, lettuce, lots of lettuce and veggies, whatever I have left, and it will just become some great big salad with salsa as our dressing. Macaroni and cheese, I like to bake it from scratch. It's really delicious when you make it from scratch, but I always have macaroni in my pantry, and typically, I usually have cheese left over. Other meals that are good ones that are like breakfast for dinner meals would be omelets, except obviously not right now when eggs are so expensive. But actually, that is one way of stretching your eggs. So an omelet could be 2 eggs and then lots of meat, and it fills you up a lot more than more eggs. Biscuits and gravy is a fan favorite at my home, and even fried cornbread and gravy. That's actually our true favorite. And so you just make cornbread without any sugar, and then you dice up your cornbread and you fry it in a little bit of olive oil in a cast iron skillet. It's so good. It ends up turning, you don't fry it as long as you would like croutons. You're not aiming for like crusty, crunchy bits. It's just slightly fried. And then you pour gravy over it, and oh, it's so good. Some other things you can do if it's truly an emergency, and these are my last-ditch efforts, so I always do the other things first. But then when it comes right down to it, if I still need more, here's what I do. I will sometimes borrow from the next month. Like if it's the day before the month starts, Sometimes I'll sneak it in and I'll just say, okay, the money's already hit my account. Even though it's for next month and that doesn't start till tomorrow, I'm just going to go today. And so I'll just kind of borrow for myself from next month. But I always try to think of this as a loan, not a gift. So what's going to happen then, and this is the con of this, is that next month you have less money. So just thinking of it as a loan, not a gift, and trying to buy with the purpose of a few cheaper meals so that you can stretch it a little bit longer next month. The pro of that is you aren't dipping into savings and you're not digging yourself deeper in debt. You want to avoid those things. So that's what I do if I'm really close to the end of the month, like the day before, and I'm just at the end. Another thing you can do that keeps you from going into debt is to use your cushion. If you keep a cushion in your checking account, or if you keep a cushion for like a sinking funds or something, or if you have an emergency fund, you could pull out just enough for what you need. Again, trying to keep it the rock bottom. You're just eking your way through and borrow from your emergency fund. You can also, and this I would do before I did the last two, but that is to borrow or transfer from other categories that maybe you haven't spent out all that money. And I wouldn't do this with large amounts, but if you just need one meal, I mean, you can grab probably a few ingredients, use what you have in your pantry for the rest of them, and you can probably make a meal on $5 if you're just really picky about what you're making. So borrowing or transferring from other categories or sinking funds that have a little extra. But here's some cautions. I'm going to encourage you with some do nots, okay? Thou shalt nots. Thou shalt not go into debt to someone other than yourself. Okay, so if you're borrowing from next month's food budget to buy groceries for today, you are going into debt, but it's to yourself. That's okay. The borrower is servant to the lender. You're lending to yourself, to future you. So maybe future you can recoup that, okay? But don't go into debt to someone else. Do not use credit cards for something you can't pay for. In fact, our general rule is we do not use credit cards for something we can't pay for right now with that amount of money. So the problem with credit cards, they are like last ditch. Now, we use credit cards, but we always pay them off and we always subtract that money from our budget when we use that money. So it's not like we subtract it next month when the bill goes out, when the paycheck goes out to cover the bill. We subtract it right away. That money is gone from our minds and our sight. The reason for that is because credit cards have such high APRs. 36% is not unheard of. That's crazy. For every dollar you spend, you will pay 36% in interest, depending on how long that interest carries. That's rotten to the core. So don't use credit cards. That's a number one, thou shalt not. And I just really, to me, that's a hard, bright line that I will not cross. Number 3, obviously, do not steal. You never want to steal. Number 4, here's a good one for us as ladies. Do not blame God or get bitter. I'll tell you what, to be very honest with you, I really treat this like a challenge. This is a game to me. It can be a game because for many years we have lived lower than our means. Every month we live lower than our means. Every month we have a little bit extra we're socking away somewhere. If I have to dip into that, that's okay, but that means that doesn't go to that other thing. And I've got goals. I've got big goals. We've got goals. Together as a family, as a couple, we have goals. I want to meet those goals. I want to accomplish those goals. So what I don't want to do is to dip into my savings my extra that I'm using to meet those goals. But the other thing I don't want to do is blame God and get bitter. I made my budget. I made my goals. God gives me the money. He provides every month. You know what? If you start getting bitter because you don't have money for your wants, take a deep breath because you have a God who is a good shepherd. And Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want." And that word want means lack. I shall not lack anything I need. Will you want in the way we use that word today? Yes, you will. You can always want for something more than you have. Your wanter will never run out. There will always be something else that you want, and it will never satisfy you. So don't think, well, if I just had $20 more this month, I would be satisfied. I could make it through and everything would be good. And God didn't give me that $20. Don't think like that. You might have wasted $20 somewhere, and that $20 would have been yours. Number 5, do not tell your kids you are poor. I just really want to caution you against this. Even if you're joking, don't ever give your children that impression. I want my children to grow up knowing that they have a God who meets every single need that they have. He will never not meet a true need. That does not mean that they get everything they want. That does not mean that they don't have to make hard choices sometimes about what's best. But they have a God who has met every need, who frequently meets those needs way in advance. And they also have a responsibility to not spend the money he has provided for meeting their needs on things that they want to the point where they then don't have money for their needs. That is testing God. And those are just some of the cautions I have as you get low in your budget and you're trying to make it through. I will tell you why I'm so low in my budget. I mean, there's multiple reasons, but this particular time, the reason why it was a whole week of just having $20.41 is because I forgot to add a receipt into my budget on my Every Dollar app. Usually I do it right away after I spend, but this month there was one receipt and it was for like $170. And I kept looking at my Every Dollar app thinking, wow, I got plenty of money. I'm going to have extra left at the end of the month. And then I found that receipt and I was like, oh no, I'm not even going to, I'm probably already over. And imagine my great relief when I discovered I still had $20 left because I was like, I have a whole week and I only have $20. It was, and I just told you the things I have to fall back on, right? We have a cushion. We have an emergency fund. We have extra money in sinking funds. We have extra money in other categories we could transfer over. Not a problem. Really not a problem. But I want to make this. I want to win my challenge. It's a game that I'm playing and I want to be a winner. So I hope this has been an encouragement to you. I hope there's at least one thing that you can take away from this. And what I would love is if you have other ideas, could you please put them in the comments below? And that way we can all learn from you too. And if you've ever faced this situation, for instance, if right now you face this situation and you have some amount of money left in your grocery budget that you're a little bit afraid you won't make it through the end of the month, drop that in the comments below. I would love to see that and hear your story too and your testimony. And I plan to make it through. We'll see. We'll see if I have to use some of those other strategies, but that's my goal. All right. I've got some more topics coming up that I think you will be interested in. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.